This is the Roper Highway in the Northern Territory. Two young Aboriginal men, Shaun and Shane Baker, brothers in their 20s from a community up the road, were both killed here, just a few kilometres apart and 2 years apart. The road here is long and straight with a single lane, red dirt on either side, and a speed limit of 110 kilometres an hour. Their sister Wendy Baker says her brothers were both out on nights on the town and then on their way back to the remote community that they're from when they were hit and killed by cars. She says she still doesn't really know what happened to either of her brothers. Were they hit and killed walking home? Had they fallen asleep on the side of the road and been struck by a vehicle that way? Were they sleeping on the road? There was no police investigation and there's no formal coronial documents that I've been able to access through my work. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Northern Territory are about 15 times more likely to be hit and killed by a car than pedestrians in any other part of Australia. Since 2000, 177 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been hit and killed by cars in the Northern Territory. Only about 25% of the population in the NT identify as Aboriginal, but they make up about 80% of all road deaths in the Territory. According to court documents I've seen, in the past 5 years, some drivers involved with hit and run accidents involving Aboriginal people have committed some pretty awful crimes. They've told police after the event, "I just hit a dog." They've taken their car through the car wash, cleaned it up, and then got back to work on a taxi rank at the airport. Or they've simply just driven home, and that stopped police from testing to see whether drugs or alcohol may have played a part in the crash. There's been about 10 people die near Mataranka in the Northern Territory, in that same area that the Baker brothers were killed. And locals in that area say maybe something that could change is the way that the drinking area in town interacts with the highway and interacts with the local grog shop. We also went to a place called Barunga just down the road, and locals there say that when they moved their drinking spot, the pedestrian deaths stopped. They'd had about 6 in a decade, but when they moved that, there hasn't been any since. So Labor Senator for the NT, Melandiri McCarthy, says that even though there could be local solutions to some of these issues, we also need to look at it from a national perspective. And that might mean more practical solutions like advertisements that are in language that help people understand the dangers about being around a road. But it also would mean reckoning with some harder to grasp kind of concepts like whether some drivers do exhibit racism and are less likely to take care for people when they're Aboriginal. And she also said that people need to understand, I guess, a kind of fundamental truth in all this, which is that there's certain groups of Aboriginal people in the NT that are so isolated, whether it be physically because they live out of town, whether it be from an economic perspective because they don't own a car or they can't afford to put petrol in a car. And what that basically means is that they are just forced to spend more time walking where cars are than other people. There's been 23 deaths in the NT since 2020, but only 9 of those have resulted in a criminal prosecution, and only 3 of those have been completed. Of those 3 people, none of them received a jail term, despite in one case the driver being under the influence of cannabis, in another one the person fleeing the scene, and in a third the person driving in an unregistered car while they were unlicensed.